So there's a lot of talk about what is the greatest fight of all time in anime history. The homie JD dropped a tweet showing the 8 fights that he has in contention, and we are going to rank them from worst to best. As you can see here, we have Goku versus Jiren, Naruto versus Sasuke, Luffy versus Kaido, Ichigo versus Ukiora, Levi versus the Beast Titan, All Might versus All For One, Meadowwind versus Netero, and Tekken versus Gutaro. A lot of great fights here. Clearly this is going to be tough, but we got to find out which one is number 1 of these 8 and which one is the worst. Starting off at number 8, I have to look at All Might versus All For One. Now this fight wasn't a horrible fight, but when I'm talking about my greatest fights of all time in anime history, they have to encompass animation, great storytelling, as well as some great choreography. You need to have a mixture of all 3 elements. Some elements may be stronger than others, and that's okay, but when I'm looking at the All Might versus All For One fight, there's something that's missing for me. 1, All Might's injury. That was the biggest thing that kind of robbed us of seeing All Might really going all out, because he couldn't stay in that form for too long. Also, you're having All For One fighting other people besides All Might. The League of Villains' big focus was trying to kidnap Bakugo. They weren't really worried about fighting other people at that time. It just happened to be that All Might pulled up because All For One was there. And the only real memorable scene from this fight was All Might's United States of Smash, which was great, by the way, but we really didn't get to see All Might and All For One really clash out for a very long time. It still deserves a spot on this list, but when you're looking at the rest of the picks here, it's definitely the worst. At number 7, I'm looking at Ichigo versus Ulquiorra. I know the Bleach fans are gonna say I hate Bleach, but it actually has nothing to do with that. I actually would have rather picked Ichigo versus Grimmjow for my favorite fight in Bleach. But Ichigo versus Ukiora was still a great fight to me. I still think that we got to see Vassalore Ichigo going crazy, and seeing Ukiora having to tap into his resurrection, we got to see his great setos as well. Ukiora is a great fighter, but when I'm looking at the storytelling aspect of it, Ukiora was somebody that was kind of looking down on Ichigo, really underestimated Ichigo, and did not consider him a true threat until the Vassalore form popped out. Ichigo's fight against Grimmjow was a whole different story. Grimmjow actually considered Ichigo as a rival, and I think that helped bring up the hype with their fight. The choreography in that fight against Grimmjow was also a lot cleaner, a lot smoother to me. Vassalore Ichigo was much stronger, but he did not have control over his power. It still is a great fight and deserves to be in this conversation, but I'm not picking it high up. At number 6, I'm going with Luffy versus Kaido. I know my One Piece fans out there are shocked, but we have to look at the picture one more time. This version of Luffy versus Kaido is not the one I'm waiting for. This is not the one that I want to see, and my manga readers know what I'm really talking about. It was great seeing Luffy tap into his advanced Conqueror's Haki, and that's the first time we really got to see a kind of explanation of it. We got to see what it looks like for Luffy. We got to see Kaido questioning whether he belongs in his Fab Five. A lot of great moments did happen on the roof, but we do know that Luffy got defeated multiple times, which required a Yamato to step in, a Zoro to step up. Even Shinobu was forced to age Momonosuke. But when the second part of this fight happens, that fight is definitely gonna move up my list, but I need to see it animated. We already saw what went down in the manga, and you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Still deserves a spot on this list for sure, but we do know that that part 2 of the roof piece fight between Luffy and Kaido is going to break the internet. I'm calling it now. At number 5, I think I'm gonna go with Levi versus the Beast Titan. If you're Zeke and you hear Levi's name, you run, you teleport, you do everything in your power to stay as far away as possible from Levi, because Levi is your kryptonite. Levi in this fight was destroying the Beast Titan so badly, Zeke never looked so scared in his life. But that's my thing with this fight. It wasn't a fight. It was a one-sided massacre. We got to see Levi using his ODM equipment to the highest grade that we have ever seen Levi use it. We finally understand what it means to be an Ackerman, but Zeke stood no chance against Levi. And that kind of took away from what it meant to be a fight, because there really was no fight. It was destruction. For there to be a good anime fight, you need 2 powers that are close to each other so they can really box it out and see what's going on and see who wins. I mean, we already knew what was going to happen from the moment Levi started to move upside the Beast Titan's head. It was over with. All right, so now we are in the top 4. At number 4, I'm looking at Tekken versus Gutaro, y'all. I've been seeing a lot of Demon Slayer hate going around recently, and I do not align myself with it at all. I truly understand that Demon Slayer does not have the greatest story of all time, even though it's one of the hypest anime of all time, especially right now. We have to remember what I said in the beginning of this video, that one of my elements when I'm looking at fights in anime is the animation, and this has to be one of the most beautifully animated fights that we have seen in years. Tekken versus Gutaro is such a smooth fight, and the story is really not that far off from being as hype as well, because I do love the Entertainment District arc. Now, if there's one knock on Demon Slayer, it's the the fact that we don't really get to understand the demon's backstory until they are on their deathbeds. That's something that's different from anime, which generally give us the villain's backstory before we even enter the fight. It's not a terrible thing for building up the hype for a fight, but I guess people really want to know about their villains before they go into battle. I still think that because the animation is so crisp, so clear, so smooth, that you just have to put it in the top 4. I mean, what is done for animation, it literally changed the game. Every other top tier shonen fight that's coming out after the Entertainment District arc has to really step their game up. At number 3, I'm going with Meadowwind versus Netero. This is one of my favorite fights, even if we're talking outside of Hunter x Hunter. Netero was stepping into a fight that he knew he had a very small chance of even surviving, and we got to see Netero literally going all out, putting pressure on Meadowwind, frustrating a Meadowwind who was the perfect chimera ant, had all of the Nen potential in his body, and he struggled to break through Netero's defenses for a very long portion of the fight. And this fight has so many memorable scenes, whether it is the 100 hands that comes out or even Netero's rose bomb. I mean, these techniques that Netero was showing us literally blew our minds, and it had Meadowwind literally on the ropes. And check this out, they both passed because of their greatness. Now, we can say that Meadowwind got stronger post-Rose, and that's fine if you want to say that, but the bomb still ended up doing its job, which was to get Meadowwind off of the earth. Meadowwind got to show us a lot of great attack power as well in that fight, but it was still tough for him to break through Netero's defenses because Netero has been training for so long. I really love that fight. Definitely top 3. At number 2, y'all, I gotta go with Goku versus Jiren. Goku versus Jiren was one of the greatest fights we've seen in the last decade because we got to see Goku being forced into Ultra Instinct Omen and then being forced to go to Mastered Ultra Instinct. He had to perfect the Ultra Instinct technique just to compete with Jiren. This is how powerful Jiren the Grey is. The animation was completely top tier. The fighting choreography was amazing. On Goku's side, I loved the storytelling because Vegeta literally gave one of the greatest speeches on Goku that we have ever seen. There's only 2 things that stopped this fight from being number 1 for me. 1, Goku needed a lot of help, whether it was Android 17 or Vegeta reaching his evolution blue form just to compete with Jiren. 2, Jiren the Grey's backstory was too simple for me. I wanted to see a lot more about Jiren, and I really didn't get that. I believe the storytelling aspect on Jiren's side needed some work, and that kind of took away from the fight because we did not really care about Jiren as much as we cared about Goku. As opposed to other fights in the Dragon Ball series like Goku versus Frieza, where there's a lot of history built up behind it. Jiren didn't have that history. But the fighting choreography and the animation itself was really tip-top shape, so it definitely still gets number 2 for me. Which leaves Naruto versus Sasuke as the number 1 fight of this chart. I have no problem saying that. Naruto versus Sasuke, the rivalry is literally going from back in the academy days. This is how far their rivalry goes back. They are literally reincarnations of Ashura and Injira. They were meant to box with each other. They were destined to follow the same fate of a Hashirama and a Madara, going down the same path of the final valley battle. They did it once before. Now the fight that we are looking at is the final time they fought within the Naruto Shippuden series. Animation, top tier. Choreography, top tier. Storytelling, top tier. We see Sasuke frustrated right after the 4th Great Ninja War, seeing all of the corruption that was going on within the Hidden Leaf Village and saying that he now wants to become Hokage, whereas you're seeing a Naruto saying that he wants to be the Hokage and that he believes that Sasuke should stay and stick around and work alongside him. You get the passion that they both have, and you see how much that Sasuke went through just to keep up with Naruto in power and vice versa with Naruto, and you're finally getting to see them both go all out against each other. I mean, yeah, it was a perfect match. It was something like Goku and Vegeta back in the day. I gotta give it to Naruto and Sasuke at number 1. Now you guys let me know down in the comment section below how you would rank these fights. Now I get there are anime fights that are outside of this chart that would definitely be better fights, and you guys can comment them down below because I even have my own list as well. But with that, I'll see you guys next time.